the last chapter, we discussed how the exiled Godfrey joined forces with Marika as the woman in the black hood, and together they conspired against Radagon. Marika, as the woman in the black hood, planned the Night of the Black Knives while in exile. Many of you are probably wondering how something like this could even be possible. How can an unknown real Marika ally herself with Godfrey while Radagon is posing as Marika and Leyndell? Let me introduce you to my concept of Marika. Radagon is Marika is the most important and only sentence on which all theories about these two are based. And it is Corin again who is confused by the circumstances surrounding Radagon as Marika.
Master, whatever is the matter? Please, I implore you, continue. Continue your reflections, your rhythms. I must be the one to record them. What matters this issue of Radagon, really? The Erdtree, heart of the Golden Order, lies before our very eyes. Why must these qualms come to you now? We were on the very cusp. Oh, was that you? Sorry, I hardly noticed. I'm a little shaken since the Master ceased his movements. The Master's reflections had heightened as we neared the Erdtree, while still a precise calculus. The rhythms grew increasingly wild until he simply ceased. Now the Master is facing quite the puzzle. The Golden Order is founded on the principle that Marika is the one true god. However, the name of Marika's second husband, King Consort Radagon, also appeared. Who exactly was Radagon? The Master is stumped. His finger has remained still ever since Radagon's name was discovered. Curse my mediocre mind. The Master only has me. And here I fail him. What on earth did you do to the Master? Well, not that I'm complaining. Master's finger moves again, resuming his cogitation. More than good enough for me. I haven't the words to thank you, so I'd like to pass this on to you instead. A glimpse into the heart of the Golden Order, documented by yours truly. To think that Radagon was Marika herself, or at least such is all I can interpret from the rhythm and calculus of his finger. How would such a thing even have been possible, I wonder? Sadly, I cannot comprehend it myself. Do you have a fuller understanding of the matter? Well, either way, I can continue my documentation. In truth, it matters very little whether I understand the Master's thoughts or not. I am merely his scribe. It is my sole and unwavering purpose.
Radagon is Marika. This sentence is one of the most important in Elden Ring. Since the release of Elden Ring, the entire community believes it understands this sentence. All consensus in the community about the connection between Radagon and Marika is based solely on this sentence. I believe that the community has not understood the actual meaning of this sentence. Corin himself admits that he does not understand the connections. What about you? Do you understand the exact meaning of Radagon is Marika? In the following, I would like to present a concept of Marika, which I am firmly convinced corresponds to the actual relations. Let's first take a look at Radagon's and Marika's Scar Seals and Soul Seals. Radagon's Scar Seal and Soul Seal increase the stats of Vigor, Endurance, Strength and Dexterity. Marika's Scar Seal and Soul Seal, on the other hand, increase the stats of Mind, Intelligence, Faith and Arcane. Radagon's Scar Seal and Soul Seal increase stats associated with physical attributes. Marika's Scar Seal and Soul Seal, on the other hand, increase stats that can be considered more spiritual attributes. In comparison, Radagon embodies the physical, while Marika represents the spiritual. Now let's move on to the concept of Marika. Radagon represents the physical vessel. Marika, on the other hand, exists only as a soul within Radagon. Radagon is a living vessel with consciousness, and Marika's soul exists within him. But Radagon is not just a living vessel. Radagon is able to change his form. At the end of chapter 7, I compared Godwyn and Radagon together with the description of the Silver Tear mask. It said, Silver Tear mask. Mask fashioned from the corpse of a formless Silver Tear, supported by its hardened shed husk. To imitate the imitator is a cunning play indeed. The line, to imitate the imitator is a cunning play indeed, is an allusion to the fact that Godwyn, as a formless Silver Tear, acquires exactly the same abilities as Radagon. Radagon was himself a Silver Tear. The hardened material that Radagon is made of, when we face him at the end, is nothing more than the hardened shell of an almost dead Silver Tear. In relation to the concept of Marika, Radagon is the dominant formless vessel that switches between the forms of Radagon and Marika. The Marika who appears in public is Radagon, who carries the soul of the real Marika within him. Now, there is a third instance. The Elden Beast, which acts in accordance with the greater will, is the Elden Ring itself and represents the concept of order. Radagon and Marika are both guided and influenced by the greater will in the background. Influenced by the Elden Beast and the greater will, Godfrey is banished from the realm of the Erdtree by Radagon and Marika. He wanders into exile in Limgrave. Marika is interested what the Golden Order is actually based on.
In Marika's own words, I declare mine intent to search the depths of the Golden Order through understanding of the proper way. Our faith, our grace is increased. Those blissful early days of blind belief are long past. My comrades, why must ye falter?
And by searching the depth of the Golden Order, she discovers a terrible truth. Marika speaks out against the foundations of the Golden Order and got abandoned by Radagon.
In Marika's own words, the Erdtree governs all. The choice is thine. Become one with the Order, or divest thyself of it, to wallow at the fringes, a powerless upstart.
From there on, Marika takes on a physical form and is sent into exile. This is the real Marika, who appears as the woman in the black hood. The real Marika meets Godfrey and they conspire against Radagon and the Greater Will. Marika and Godfrey also join forces with the other demigods, Godwyn, Ranni, Rykard and Melina. Marika plans the Night of the Black Knives to allow Godwyn to escape undetected and resurrect him in Stormvale as a Silver Tear. Godwyn arrives in Stormvale, but the resurrection fails. What happened to prevent Godwyn from being resurrected in Stormvale? On the Night of the Black Knives, Marika was supposed to give Godwyn new life in Stormvale. But Marika, as the woman in the black hood, died on that night. In the previous chapter, we established that Fia forms a parallel to Marika. The first time we speak to Fia in secret, she tells us the following.
I was known as a deathbed companion. Where I come from, after I received the warmth and lively vigor from a number of champions, I lay with the remains of an exalted noble. To grant him another chance at life, to do so is the purpose of my being. But before I could bear the noble into new life, I was awakened by the guidance of grace and chased from my birthplace. Pray, be kind. Despite all that, I still wish to be a deathbed companion. So please, let me hold you like this as often as it takes.
Since Fia is a parallel to Marika, we can assume that these circumstances also applied to Marika. Marika, the woman in the black hood, died before she could rebirth Godwyn. There are also clues to this in other places. In Chapter 7, we discovered that the Sage's Cave tells the story of the Knight of the Black Knives through associations. The references begin with the Black Knife Assassin and the Concealing Veil, which provide us with the context of the Knight of the Black Knives. Next, the Four-Bladed Raptor Talons and the Four Dragonwound Greaves tell the story of Godwyn's survival and 46's sacrifice. The story of the Flightless Bird and the Ancient Dragon 46. Directly opposite are 10 golden great arrows together with crystal cave moss. These represent the Erdtree and the Elden Beast from which Godwyn wants to escape. Next is a chest containing a stone sword key, whose association we have not yet discovered. Further back are 5 silver-pickled fowl feet, the black hood, the candletree wooden shield, and a nascent butterfly. These items tell the story of the hooded woman who prophesies Godwyn's resurrection and cooperates with Miquella. The last 2 items, the 5 rejuvenating boluses and the lost ashes of war, tell the story of Godwyn's resurrection in Limgrave with no memory of past events. Now, there is another character inside the cave next to the Black Knife Assassin. It is Necromancer Garrus. He carries the following items with him: the Sage Robe and Sage Trousers, the Prince of Death's Staff, and the weapon Family Heads. Here too, a character is coded with color red to identify him as a Radagon parallel. In the Prince of Death's Staff it says, Prince of Death's Staff, staff embedded with sullied amber, said to be a very part of the Prince of Death. Since the staff is supposed to contain a part of Godwyn, this could be interpreted as a reference to Radagon's desire for Godwyn. Furthermore, Necromancer Garrus possesses the weapon Family Heads. The Family Heads are probably the most interesting. They say, Family Heads. 3 bludgeoning copper heads attached to a handle by chains. Signature weapon of Necromancer Garrus, the heretical sage. The heads were made to resemble those of his wife and 2 children. If we interpret Necromancer Garrus as a reference to Radagon, then he apparently lost 3 people on the Night of the Black Knives. The 2 children are apparently a reference to Godwyn and Ranni, who died in a sense on that night. The wife, on the other hand, is apparently a reference to Marika, the woman in the black hood, Radagon's other half, who also died on the Night of the Black Knives. Here too we find a small hint that Marika did not survive the Night of the Black Knives. In Chapter 9 we discover that the catacombs and the lands between were designed with a thematic reference to the hooded woman. Her statue is the only one that appears in the catacombs. The grave on Ghost Glove wards, as well as the grave violets, are apparently associated with her. According to my theory, various rooms in all kinds of catacombs were coded with chairs. A certain number of chairs form a group and represent specific events. The 2 catacombs have several rooms with chairs. These include the Cliff Bottom Catacombs and the War Dad's Catacombs. The Cliff Bottom Catacombs form a hub for references to Marika's plan. Since the number 3 is considered a bad omen, we have associated the number 3 with Godwyn's death. Accordingly, the rooms with 3 chairs form references to Godwyn's death. The number 4, on the other hand, is a sign of great luck, which is why we have associated the rooms with 4 chairs as references to Godwyn's survival. Now let's take a look at the War Dad's Catacombs. The name itself already contains the theme of war victims and may provide information about the overarching theme. In the War Dad's Catacombs, there is a corridor that leads around an extremely large, and therefore special, statue of the hooded woman. We can even see it through a window. After seeing the hooded woman through the first window and entering the next room, we find ourselves in a room with 3 chairs. This appears to be merely a reference to the Night of the Black Knives. Here too, there is a window leading to the room with the hooded woman. Moving on to the next room, we come to a room with 4 chairs, which appears to be a reference to Godwyn's survival. And here too, there is another window with a view of the hooded woman, who was behind it all. At the end of the corridor, however, there is another room. This room is a dead end and does not contain any items. This is one of the reasons why I am convinced of my theory about the chairs. This room was deliberately designed, but obviously has no function. In this case, the design of the room itself is what should give us clues. There is a single chair at the end of the hallway. This is not an ordinary chair, but a much more ornate one, which is probably meant to emphasize its significance. There are 3 grey violets around this chair. We know from the description of the four-toed foulfoot that the number 3 is considered a bad omen, and we recently associated this with Godwyn's death. In this case, the 3 grey violets apparently refer to the death of Marika, the woman in the black hood. And not only is the number 3 apparently used as a reference to death, but there is much more to the grey violet. The grey violet is designed after the real-life spider lily and is a well-known flower in Japan with a deep meaning. The spider lily has countless different names in Japan and has many meanings, all of which are related to death. If you look a little further, you will find a 4th grey violet. The number 4 stands for great luck, which we have related to Godwyn's survival. In this case, despite death, it is meant to indicate the survival of the hooded woman's soul. Last but not least, we have a red maned knight sitting next to a grave glovewort. This symbolizes that Marika's soul has returned to Radagon. The complete interpretation of this room tells the story of Marika's death as the woman in the black hood, the survival of her soul, and the return of her soul to Radagon. The rooms in the catacombs with a single chair illustrate the context in relation to the return to the Erdtree in Radagon. In the Black Knife catacombs, we find Rose's X in the room with the chair. Here it says, Rose's X, Usher of Death, Roses, who shows the path through the catacombs throughout the lands between, is depicted on this ritual X. In the Stormfoot catacombs, we find a room with 1 chair containing Root Raisin. The entire catacomb is themed around the return to the Erdtree, and right in front of this room we find a spirit who tells us the following. A proper death means returning to the Erdtree. Have patience, until the time comes and the roots call to you. There is now one more room. It is a room in the Orisa side tomb. This room is also unique. It contains a long-tongued imp, which does not appear anywhere else in the game. This is the only place where this imp exists. The imp, which is a long-tongued demon and upon closer inspection even has insect limbs attached to it, is a reference to the deceitful Radagon and the Elden Beast. The walls with vessels are also unique in the game. Overall, the rooms in the catacombs with exactly 1 chair reference the return to the Erdtree and to Radagon and the Elden Beast. The passageway around the rare large statue of Marika as the woman in the black hood tells the story of the Knight of the Black Knives and Godwyn's death, Godwyn's survival and escape to Stormvale, and ultimately Marika's death and the return of her soul to the Erdtree and Radagon. While Marika died on the Night of the Black Knives and her soul returned to Radagon, Godfrey was left alone with his promise to Marika to ring the bell to resurrect Godwyn. However, the story of Godfrey and what followed is material for a separate video series. There has been much discussion in the lore community about Miquella's relationship with Godwyn and whether Miquella was involved in the Night of the Black Knives. What we know for sure is that Miquella was a follower of Golden Order fundamentalism in his youth. This is clear from the following incantation. Radagon's Rings of Light, one of the incantations of the Golden Order fundamentalists, a gift of gratitude to the young Miquella from his father Radagon. And yet, the young Miquella abandoned fundamentalism, for it could do nothing to treat Malenia's accursed rod. This was the beginning of unalloyed gold. The Night of the Black Knives came, and Miquella lamented Godwyn's circumstances. Similar to the finger reader crown, Miquella laments that Godwyn should have died a true death. This is what it says in the Golden Epitaph. A sword made to commemorate the death of Godwyn the Golden, first of the demigods to die. Infused with the humble prayer of a young boy. "O brother, Lord brother, please die a true death." Here it becomes clear once again that Godwyn definitely did not die a true death, and in my opinion, the ghoul depicted at the end of the sword also represents the circumstances of Godwyn, who escaped as a ghoul living in death. Although the weapon skill uses the sigil of the Erdtree, the effect definitely corresponds to an incantation of Golden Order fundamentalism. The weapon skill of the Golden Epitaph says, "Last rites. Raise the epitaph to grant the effect of sacred order to yourself and allies in the vicinity. Particularly effective at laying rest to those who live in death." The weapon skill from the Golden Epitaph uses the effect from the weapon skill Sacred Order and is even mentioned directly. It states, "Sacred Order. Skill of the Golden Order Fundamentalist Knights. Perform a salute and grant the armament Holy Essence. Highly effective against those who live in death." The weapon skill of the Golden Epitaph therefore uses a skill from Golden Order fundamentalism. It is not only the weapon skill that is linked to Golden Order fundamentalism, the symbolic gesture at the end of the sword also points to this. The gesture symbolizes Golden Order totality and is also used in the incantation Litany of Proper Death. Litany of Proper Death, one of the incantations of the Golden Order fundamentalists, used by hunters of those who live in death, creates an image of order dealing holy damage to nearby foes. This incantation is especially damaging to those who live in death. Any felt by this incantation cannot be revived. The role of the hunters is to stamp out defiled reason, all for the perfection of the Golden Order. All of this leads me to conclude that Miquella was still very young at the time of the Night of the Black Knives and was a follower of Golden Order fundamentalism. This means that Miquella was not part of the conspiracy at the time of the Night of the Black Knives. Unaware and as a follower of Golden Order fundamentalism, Miquella believes that life and death is a terrible fate and wishes Godwyn salvation. However, Miquella's opinion was to change. As already mentioned, Radagon's Ring of Light states, "And yet the young Miquella abandoned fundamentalism, for it could do nothing to treat Malenia's accursed rod. This was the beginning of unalloyed gold." Miquella's lily in particular seems to have a connection to Miquella's youth. In a way, she symbolizes his strong connection to gold and emphasizes his connection to his youth. Miquella's lily, a delicate water lily of unalloyed gold that has started to fade and wilt, a flower signifying faith in the Erdtree, thought to be beloved by the Empyrean Miquella in his youth. However, Miquella would go on to distance himself even further from Radagon. There are various statues placed around the Erdtree. We find a statue of Miquella. Elsewhere, we also find a statue depicting Malenia and Miquella together. However, there is another statue. A statue depicting a woman with a hood. This statue is the most common statue in the Erdtree. It is also the only statue that appears in all areas of the Erdtree. Who is this person? In fact, it is a statue that appears in all heroes' graves with a slightly different posture. If you compare these two statues, you can clearly see that they are definitely of the same person. The hood, the body proportions, the robe, and the face shape are completely identical. There is a very large statue of this type in the French folk hero's grave. In front of this statue, we find the talisman Erdtree's Favor, which reads, Erdtree's Favor, a talisman depicting a special blessing of the Erdtree. It is said that when the age of the Erdtree began, such blessings were personally bestowed upon their recipients by Queen Marika herself. Since we find this talisman directly in front of a huge statue of a woman, it is strongly implied that the statue is none other than Marika. This means that the woman depicted on the Erdtree is also Marika. Is Marika in contact with Miquella? How is that possible? Marika's soul is trapped in Radagon and the Elden Beast and is being interrogated and pressured about the Night of the Black Knives. In the immediate vicinity of Marika's fourth church, which is color-coded with white and purple flowers and which is guarded by mausoleum soldiers, which all highlights the connection to Marika as the woman in the black hood, we find a character parallel to these circumstances. It is Selen who mirrors Marika's circumstances. Selen forms a parallel to Marika. Selen is also being held captive and appears to be under interrogation.
It will do no good, I swear it. And yet you persist. You frothing degenerates!
While Selen is being held captive and tortured, she is still able to create an astral projection of herself in another place. Her astral projection serves as our teacher, and she herself takes us on as apprentice and shares her knowledge with us. These are exactly the circumstances that applied to Marika. While Marika's soul is trapped and tortured in Radagon and the Elden Beast, she is still able to create an astral projection to contact Miquella. Marika shares her knowledge with Miquella, who becomes her apprentice. This is possibly also a reason why we find Marika's sword seal at the Erdtree. From this point on, Miquella's views should change even more. We find revenants at the Erdtree, which are not classified as those who live in death in the game, but we can still consider them undead. In addition, there are various images of skulls and something that looks like necromancy on the walls. While Miquella rejected necromancy in his youth and as a follower of the Golden Order, it is now apparently part of the culture at the Erdtree. We had already found clues in the Sage's Cave that Marika is apparently connected to Miquella. Marika also let Miquella in on the secrets about Godwyn, which made Miquella and Malenia part of the plot against Radagon. Miquella took Marika's prophecy about Godwyn's resurrection and the burning of the Erdtree to heart. The fact that the candletree symbol is everywhere on the Erdtree reflects this. Last but not least, Miquella was also in contact with Castle Sol, in front of which stands the Wandering Mausoleum. Castle Sol is also home to the Eclipse Showdle, which predicts Godwyn's resurrection. Through Castle Sol, Miquella has direct connections to the Wandering Mausoleums and the Mausoleum soldiers and knights. The Eclipse Showdle once again makes the connection to the prophecy of Godwyn's resurrection clear at the end, as the Eclipse Showdle houses the flames of the Prince of Death and symbolizes his resurrection. Miquella was Marika's apprentice and was supposed to wait for Godwyn's resurrection in her place. The flowers associated with Marika and Miquella reflect some of these relationships very well. Miquella's lily symbolizes his youth and his turning away from the Golden Order fundamentalism. At that time, Miquella did not yet know the true events of the Night of the Black Knives. Marika then made contact with Miquella using astral projection, took him on as her apprentice, and gave him the task of waiting for Godwyn's resurrection. As the former woman in the Black Hood depicted in the catacombs, Marika is associated with the flowers Glove Ward and Grey Violet. Not only do these two flowers represent the color combination of white and purple, but they are also both lilies, modeled after real-life lilies. The Grey Violet is modeled after the real-life spider lily, and the Glove Ward actually has the same name in real life. It is often referred to as the Lily of the Valley. Both possess a profound symbolic meaning in real life. Just as Miquella is associated with lilies, Marika is also associated with lilies. Interestingly, Santrina's lilies has the same color combination of purple and white, and is also a lily. I am convinced that Santrina is Miquella's identity as Marika's apprentice. Regarding the events in the lands between, Miquella and Santrina are one and the same person. The corpse we find in Morg's palace is not only Miquella's body, but also Santrina's. There is cut content that would have made it pretty clear that Santrina is none other than Miquella. But even now, there is still one item that makes it clear that Santrina is Miquella. It is the Fervors Cookbook 3. Fervors Cookbook. A record of crafting techniques left by a man who was utterly captivated by Santrina. He continued the search for her in his slumber. Acquire the knowledge to craft the following: Bewitching Branch. In this cookbook, which is associated with the Santrina, we find the recipe for Bewitching Branch. Tree branch blessed with an incantation of unalloyed gold. The Empyrean Miquella is loved by many people. Indeed, he has learned very well how to compel such affection. So, behind the name Santrina is none other than Miquella, who was Marika's apprentice, was let in on the real story about Godwyn, and is supposed to wait for Godwyn's resurrection in her place. Many of you are probably wondering how the Realm of Shadow fit in the overall picture. My interpretation of the Realm of Shadow requires its own video series, but I can say one thing for now. In my opinion, the events in the Realm of Shadow are definitely more symbolic in nature.
Even telling dream from reality is a task increasingly beyond me.
The way in which Miquella, still unaware, regretted Godwyn's circumstances, and after being enlightened by Marika, clung to the prophecy of his resurrection, shows that Miquella looked up to Godwyn and had a good relationship with him. There is a statue at the Erdtree that can only be found once. A statue that includes a third figure alongside Malenia and Miquella. This figure bends protectively over the young Malenia and Miquella. I am firmly convinced that the figure depicted on the statue is none other than Godwyn. Godwyn apparently always acted benevolently towards Miquella and Malenia, which is why they always looked up to him. Miquella was ultimately supposed to wait for his awakening in Marika's place, because Marika already sensed that she would not be there for much longer. Marika acts with foresight and has probably sensed that she will not be able to influence future events for much longer. All efforts to resurrect Godwyn in Stormvale have failed. Radagon is incredibly powerful, and it is unclear whether anyone other than Godwyn is capable of challenging him. Not only does it seem as if nothing and no one can stop Radagon, but Radagon has also discovered the traces of the Night of the Black Knives. In the end, Radagon actually managed to uncover the traces of the Night of the Black Knives. Radagon found out where Godwyn had fled and where he was. Fearing for his son and with no other way to stop Radagon, Marika had no choice but to destroy herself along with Radagon and the Elden Ring. Marika's soul resisted and she sacrificed herself to protect Godwyn and in the hope of putting an end to the Elden Beast. In the Church of Stormvale, which played such an important role in Godwyn's story, we find the character Roger. Roger is determined to find out what happened on the Night of the Black Knives. Roger is actually a parallel to Radagon. Let's take a closer look at Roger's story. Roger is determined to uncover what happened on the Night of the Black Knives. When he gets too close to Godwyn's traces, he's mortally wounded. He then finds himself trapped in the Round Table Hold, fighting against inevitable death. If we interpret Roger as a parallel to Radagon, then the following events have taken place. Radagon was obsessed with finding out what happened on the Night of the Black Knives, hunted those who live in death, and tried to find and destroy Godwyn. When Radagon tracked down Godwyn, he was mortally wounded. Marika saw no other way out. Marika's soul resisted with all its might one last time and destroyed itself, the Elden Ring, and Radagon. Mortally wounded, Radagon locked himself inside the Erdtree. Marika, the woman in the black hood, died prematurely without being able to give Godwyn new life in the Chapel of Anticipation. Her soul found its way back to the Erdtree and subsequently returned to Radagon and the Elden Beast. She used a projection to share her knowledge with Miquella and let him in on the conspiracy. Miquella is to wait for his resurrection in Marika's place. Marika saw the only way to protect Godwyn and possibly to prevent Radagon from becoming too powerful in destroying herself and the Elden Ring. Shattering the Elden Ring not only scattered the great runes, the fragments of the Elden Ring across the lands between. The Erdtree, as we now see it, is not the actual Erdtree. The golden apparition of the Erdtree is something that only came into being after the Elden Ring was shattered. Just as we leave runes in the form of the sprouting tree when we die, Marika left behind the huge apparition of the golden Erdtree when she shattered the Elden Ring. The materialized holy essence consists of runes or grace. Runes and grace are more or less identical. For example, all runes say, "Grace that dwells within the inhabitants of the lands between." To keep things simple, I will refer to runes and grace simply as holy essence. There are several clues in the game that suggest we are not seeing the original Erdtree, for example in the golden seed. A golden seed found at the base of an illusory tree. The sprouting golden trees are called illusory trees here. They are trees made of materialized holy essence and are not real trees. There is even a site of grace directly in front of Lane Dale called Phantom Tree, which also points to the existence of not real trees. The fact that the Erdtree appears transparent from certain perspectives is intended to make you think about this even more. This is actually an intentional effect. You can even see it in a cutscene in Night Rain. The golden essence surrounding the Erdtree is materialized grace, which hides the condition of the actual Erdtree beneath it. There is an interesting connection between the tree and the person responsible for it. Gideon comments on the condition of the Harlech and draws conclusions about Miquella's condition based on this.
But with the Harlech tree as it is, I suppose Miquella must already be. My apologies. Lost myself for a moment there.
Gideon suggests that the state of the Harlech reflects the state of Miquella. We seem to find the same circumstances in relation to Radagon and the Erdtree. Radagon is in a broken state and it is questionable whether he is even still alive. Radagon's body, which appears to be a hardened shell of a silver tear, is further evidence that Radagon is as good as dead from the effects of the shattering. The same should also be reflected in the real Erdtree. The description of the golden seed also says, "When the Elden Ring was shattered, these seeds flew from the Erdtree, scattering across the various lands, as if life itself knew that its end has come." We also find the Great Club in the lands between. Great Club. While it may seem sacrilegious, this weapon is said to be a withered branch of the Erdtree. Imbued with holy power, this weapon will never snap. The golden essence in the Great Club is what holds it together. In itself, it is a withered branch of the Erdtree. Gideon also apparently came to the realization that the Erdtree has been withering away for a long time. In the incantation, Lord's Divine Fortification, it says, Gideon gained true knowledge after his long exchange with the two fingers, discovering all had been broken long ago, that the trembling fingers bent with age, and the Erdtree itself were no exception. We also find an allusion to the outer shell of holy essence concealing the actual withered Erdtree in the arm wraps of Dryleaf Dane. The Dryleaf sect is distinguished by the fact that it is already recognized that the old order is crumbling. Dryleaf arm wraps, sun-faded and lightly soiled arm wraps, wound tightly around the arms as if it might prevent them from being broken. Radagon and the Erdtree were shattered long ago, along with the Elden Ring. The outer shell of holy essence hides this state. Since the shattering of the Elden Ring, the Erdtree has been in a permanent state of decay. It is the golden essence that distorts time and slows down or almost stops the process. Farm Azula parallels these circumstances. Here too, a former Elden Lord, is imprisoned at the center, while Farum Azula itself is in a continuous state of decay. It is the power of gold that distorts time and delays the process. While rocks fall from Farum Azula into the entire Underscape, leaves fall from the Erdtree. The falling leaves of the golden Erdtree represent its decay since the Elden Ring was shattered. Radagon and Marika both knew what shattering the Elden Ring would entail. Radagon's Golden Order is based on the principles of causality and regression. Let's take a look at the meaning of the principles of causality and regression in Elden Ring. The term causality generally describes the principle of cause and effect. Causality is the fundamental principle that explains why something happens. Every effect has one or more causes. The incantation Law of Causality states, Law of Causality. One of the incantations of the Golden Order fundamentalists, one of the key fundamentals, manifests a small ring of causality within that allows the caster to automatically retaliate upon receiving a certain number of blows. The fundamentalists describe the Golden Order through the powers of regression and causality. Causality is the pull between meanings that which links all things in a chain of relation. The incantation creates a ring that causes an explosion when damage is received. If the ring is not damaged, no explosion is generated. The concept of causality in this context refers to the relationship between cause and effect. The effect can be summarized in the following sentence: if the ring receives damage, the ring explodes. Now let's take a closer look at the meaning of the term regression. The term regression has Latin origins. The Latin term regressio means return. That is why the term regression is often used in connection with the meaning decline or return to a previous state. The incantation Law of Regression states, Law of Regression, incantation of the Golden Order fundamentalists, one of the key fundamentals, heals all negative statuses, dispels special effects, and reveals mimicry in all its forms. The fundamentalists describe the Golden Order through the powers of regression and causality. Regression is the pull of meaning that all things yearn eternally to converge. In connection with the incantation, it is about healing and that all things eternally trying to come together. What significance do these two laws have in relation to the Golden Order and the Elden Ring? The two laws actually describe the properties of the Elden Ring and the basis of Radagon's Golden Order. The law of causality represents the property that when the Elden Ring is damaged, it shatters and scatters in an explosion. The law of regression represents the property that the runes and fragments of the Elden Ring eternally try to find their way back to each other. In short, this means when the Elden Ring is shattered, the fragments scatter and try to find their way back to each other forever. The foundations of the Golden Order describe how the Elden Ring repairs itself. The runes influence those who carry them. The Tarnished have the role of following the call of the Elden Ring and, in Radagon's eyes, are merely those who collect the runes of the Elden Ring and bring them to the Erdtree. In the end, Radagon should take the collected great runes of the Elden Ring and rule again with the Elden Ring. Why else would we be attacked by Radagon and the Elden Beast when we have collected the fragments of the Elden Ring? For this reason, the incantations, Law of Regression, and Radagon's Rings of Light are noted in the Golden Order Principia. Golden Order Principia, prayer book of the Golden Order fundamentalists, a dense and complex academic treatise that contains the Order's fundamental principles, can be given to a learned cleric to gain access to the following incantations: Radagon's Rings of Light, Law of Regression. The Golden Order Principia includes the incantations Law of Regression and Radagon's Rings of Light because it is about returning to Radagon's state as Elden Lord. The symbol of the Golden Order contains Radagon's gesture of the Golden Order totality and symbolizes how the Elden Ring is kept in its state. it should remain as it is forever. The Golden Order is meant to last forever with Radagon at its head. It is the moment we tell Goldmask, Radagon is Marika, and that we receive the Golden Order totality gesture, which should highlight that it is Radagon's Golden Order and that is Radagon who is behind of all this. Because all of this is part of Radagon's Golden Order, which is supposed to reign forever, we also find the echo of Marika, which actually comes from Radagon, in the Church of Pilgrimage in front of a Radagon statue. Radagon expects that if the Elden Ring is shattered, the Tarnished will ensure that the fragments are returned to the Erdtree to restore it. In the end, however, they merely serve Radagon to collect them. This is the truth that Gideon saw in Marika, or rather, Radagon.
Ah, I knew you'd come to stand before the Elden Ring, to become Elden Lord. What a sad state of affairs. I commend your spirit, but alas, none shall take the throne. Queen Marika has high hopes for us, that we continue to struggle. Unto eternity. I know in my bones a Tarnished cannot become a lord. Not even you. A man cannot kill a god.
The Tarnished are supposed to serve Radagon forever to restore the Elden Ring should it shattered. It was never intended that one of the Tarnished would ever become Elden Lord. The sacred relic sword, which was created from Radagon's corpse, confirms that Radagon was supposed to be the god who should rule forever. Sacred relic sword. Sword brought from the remains of a god who should have lived a life eternal. However, in addition to the law of causality and the law of regression, there is a third incantation that uses the same gesture as these. It is the incantation Order Healing. It states, Order Healing, one of the incantations of the Golden Order fundamentalists, used by hunters of those who live in death. Olivia's death blight built up. The noble Goldmask lamented what had become of the hunters, how easy it is for learning and learnedness to be reduced to the ravings of fanatics. All the good and the great wanted, in their foolishness, was an absolute evil to contend with. Does such a notion exist in the fundamentals of order? What is the significance of this incantation in relation to order? Marika was also aware of the principles of order and knew the consequences of shattering the Elden Ring. The golden apparition of the Erdtree consists of grace, or simply holy golden essence, which emerged from Radagon and Marika after the ring was shattered. The golden apparition of the Erdtree is a part of Marika, if not Marika herself in a certain sense. Marika's last hope of preventing Radagon from destroying Godwyn and possibly bringing him back to life was to shatter herself and the Elden Ring and hope that the scattered grace would find its way to Godwyn. Have you ever paid attention to what you see when you discover a new side of grace? Falling leaves. The falling leaves of the Erdtree contain grace, which has the power to bring someone back to life. Marika's last hope was to shatter herself and the Elden Ring and hope that the falling leaves and grace would find their way to Godwyn. The spirit ashes of the Erdtree soldiers contain a reference and parallel to Marika's circumstances. Here too, there are 4 soldiers in the spirit ashes, apparently to establish a connection to Godwyn's survival. The spirit ashes of the Erdtree soldiers say, Erdtree soldier ashes, used to summon the spirits of 4 Erdtree soldiers, spirits of common soldiers who carry the sacred light. When weakened, they explode to deliver a last-ditch attack. This was the bitter revelation discovered by the desperate soldiers who awaited the return of their lord to the rotted Erdtree. May the flash of our deaths guide Miquella's return. Interpreted in relation to Marika's circumstances, it means something like, when weakened, she explodes as a last resort. It was a bitter revelation from Marika, who was waiting for Godwyn's return to the Erdtree. May the shattering of the Elden Ring bring him back to life. It is Melina who contains a clue to these circumstances as well. In the battle against Morgoth, Melina uses the incantation Minor Erdtree. If Melina dies in battle, she uses the incantation one last time and creates an Erdtree made out of grace, which heals all allies nearby. The Minor Erdtree incantation says, Minor Erdtree, secret incantation of Queen Marika, only the kindness of gold without order, creates a small illusory Erdtree that continuously restores the HP of nearby allies. Marika bathed the village of her home in gold, knowing full well that there was no one to heal. Similar to Melina creating a minor Erdtree consisting of grace when she dies, Marika also left the golden Erdtree consisting of grace behind when she shattered herself and the Elden Ring. This scattered grace calls the dead back to life. There are actually references to these events in Roundtable Hold and Fortified Manor. In one of the rooms in Fortified Manor, we find a painting of Marika. Right next to this painting we find 20 black key bowls. In the exact same room in Roundtable Hold, however, there is no painting of Marika, but a painting of the golden Erdtree. And here too, there are 20 black key bowls next to the painting, this time together with Kripos' black key crossbow. The two paintings depict Marika shattering herself and leaving behind the golden apparition in the form of the Erdtree. The black key bowls and the accompanying crossbow seem to be a reference to the black and red essence found in Marika, which is apparently related to the shattering of the Elden Ring. Another painting featuring Marika also hints that the golden Erdtree, consisting of grace, is Marika. Marika and the golden Erdtree overlap here to emphasize the connection. We also find references in other places. The area around the sleeping D, which parallels Godwyn sleeping in the Chapel of Anticipation, also contains further references to the circumstances of the shattering and his resurrection. In the area around D, as the sleeping Godwyn, there is a waterfall. Marika's Scarseal is located under this waterfall. Above the waterfall is a crucible tree knight. In Chapter 7, we already interpreted the waterfall symbolism as a sign of transformation. Below the waterfall is what is left behind, and above the waterfall is the new state. In this case, too, a transformation is depicted in relation to Marika. Marika leaves herself behind, sacrifices herself, and in connection with the shattering of the Elden Ring, she leaves behind a golden Erdtree consisting of grace, which represents a part of Marika herself. The falling leaves and the grace should sooner or later bring Godwyn back to life. For this we find the incantation Order Healing right next to it. The incantation Order Healing, which cures the infestation of Deathblight, symbolizes how Godwyn, like many other Tarnished, will be brought back to life based on the principles of order to restore the Elden Ring. Next, there are also references related to fear as parallel to Marika that point to these circumstances. Shortly before she wants to revive Godwyn, she hugs us one last time and gives us the radiant Baldachin's blessing. The term radiant in this context is an allusion to the shattering of the Elden Ring and that we ultimately resurrect as a consequence of the shattered Elden Ring, for which Marika sacrificed herself. For this is what it says in the Radiant Baldachin's blessing. It said a deathbed companion will only produce a blessing of this kind for a champion but once in her entire life, with the sole blessing which she imbues of her own volition. Right next to fear is a portal. This portal teleports us to the entrance to Leyndell. The room we are teleported to serves as an additional reference. The carpet is quite unique and only appears twice in the entire game. It features a pattern of leaves, a reference to the falling leaves after the shattering of the Elden Ring. Behind us is an altar. And guess what we find on this altar? It is an altar with a faded symbol of the church bell of Stormvale. And on this altar lies a corpse with fur calling finger remedy. In fact, there is a symbolic meaning behind the term fur calling finger and its icon. In fact, Miyazaki often turns icons upside down to make their meaning less obvious. The term and icon allude to a specific gesture. In real life, it is known as dog call because it is considered a condescending gesture used to call dogs. The fur-calling finger remedy alludes to the circumstances in which we are called by grace and the Elden Ring to restore it. Marika sacrificed herself and shattered the Elden Ring along with herself in the hope that we, her son Godwyn, will be brought back to life by the falling leaves. Last but not least, there's also a reference to these related circumstances in Big Boggart's dialogue.
You're tarnished too, ain't you? Can you see it then? The guidance of grace, I mean. I can't see it at all no more. Makes no bloody sense anyway. Why some no-name shithead like me should get called to the lands between. Cruel bloody joke, you ask me. Maybe something went tits-o with it. Maybe it's been broke for a good long time. The Erdtree, I'm saying.
Because the Erdtree and the Elden Ring were broken, we too will eventually be brought back to life by the falling leaves. This is why, after we wake up, we see the falling leaves from the Erdtree around us. The hole in the roof made it possible for the falling leaves and grace to reach us. But unlike Big Boggart, we know that we are not some no-name shithead. We are not just any tarnished of no renown. We remember. We are Godwyn.
They who betrayed us, aye, they who burned us. Let them face in thy wrath their just deserts. My song will I sing in service to thee.